So I guess while we're waiting, I'm curious. HPW is Houston Public Works, I guess,
Yes, sir.
and CNL PD is that Police Department?
CNO is your council office.
Okay, what's PD?
Planning department.
Oh, Plumbing Department. Okay.
Planning.
Oh, planning. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. See how you got CSC to Houston.
Hello, Jesus. Thank you so much for joining.
Good, no problem.
So it looks like right now there are 3 of us that are not from the city, I guess. Well, we'll see.
4 of us.
Mr. Shaw, we'll go ahead and get started here in a minute, but I just want to address that if we do, we will have a couple other opportunities to meet with people out in the community, and we want to be able to talk to as many people as possible. And if this is a smaller group tonight, maybe we can just have this. I think this is still worthwhile, and we might be looking to you to help share this information with as many neighbors as possible too.
Okay. I'll be happy to make everyone's decisions for them.
Well, we will hear your input and any other input we can get tonight. And if you can have any other ideas for how we can reach neighbors out in the community, we'd love to hear it.
And actually, Paula does a great job at keeping up with with keeping up and communicate everything to the neighborhood and neighbors and the whole area. So the Civic Club, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I'll let Val be our timekeeper.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started just so we can be mindful of everyone's time. So it is a smaller group tonight, but those of you who are joining, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening. My name is Valerie Luna, and I am with the Houston Public Works Department, Transportation and Drainage Operations. Tonight, we will be discussing the Parker Road safety improvements. This has been such a great collaborative effort between the Houston Public Works Department, Planning and Development Department, and Councilmember Cisneros with District H. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a moment here just to welcome those who are in attendance.
Thank you, Valerie. I have laryngitis, so I hope you can understand my words. I did want to welcome everyone here tonight. Thank you for joining. And this has been, a long time and, a long problem that I hope we're now on a good path to moving forward. This last year has certainly been complicated by COVID, but and even at this meeting that was originally set up as a virtual meeting, we're in the city of Houston's in a transition period right now. Public Works has not had public meetings yet, but some other departments have started to do that. So, and I realize that this is a community that not everyone has access to computers. So I'd like to announce right now that we have another meeting scheduled, an in-person meeting that will be 3 weeks from tonight at the Northline Houston Community College. And so that's another opportunity. And I'm hopeful that will also be a hybrid meeting, so that if there are people that would like to watch that virtually, that's possible. But definitely it will be an in-person meeting. It will be in the auditorium, which is a large space. It's very nice. And there'll be room to spread out, and so that everyone can be comfortably safe there. I wanted to just thank the residents for approaching me and saying that that wanted to consider some of the options that were originally discussed that weren't the right solutions at the time. But we do know that narrowing roadways slows traffic, and that is the biggest problem, that we have dangerous speeding on Parker Road, and that there's steps that we can take by narrowing the lanes that will help protect homes and property and make it safer for everybody. I am funding out of council district service dollars, $240,000 that will let us to make these safety improvements along Parker Road. It's not as much money as we had available, with some other funding sources a couple of years ago, but it's what I have that I can put into it, and I'm really optimistic that that other funding will come available to extend it in either direction. But it should make a big difference in the quality of life for the residents that live along Parker Road. And I welcome everyone's comments. We are certainly wanting to hear from everybody, even if it is a small group tonight. We want to hear. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, council member. And just for everybody's awareness, we will have a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. So if you could please leave your mics on mute until then. And we also do have a Spanish speaker on the call tonight to assist with anyone who needs assistance with the Spanish speaking. And at this time, I am going to go ahead and introduce Ian Halvacek, our supervising engineer with the transportation and drainage operations here at the Houston Public Works Department.
Thank you, Val. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes.
We are coming back. We're working back at the city now, but I had to rush home to get here on time. So I haven't used this computer at home for a while. Glad it is still working. Thank y'all very much for coming tonight, and as thank you, council member, for your introduction here, and Val, you too. We will be back to talk to as many people as possible. We know that this road has been a concern for the neighborhood for many years, and we're very excited the council member has made some of her district service funds available to what we think will help solve a lot of the problems that y'all have been experiencing. So you can go to the next one, Val. And so we have heard over many years, I handle a lot of our safety investigations and our signal warrants. So we've looked at Parker, at McGallion, and Silvercrest, and at Bowman, and a lot of Carver. All these streets come through my group for analyses. And over the many years of trying to solve these problems, we've heard from the community about reckless driving and speeding, drag racing, heavier truck traffic, car crashes. I was involved a couple of years ago with installing the flashing lights on Parker, right around the curve, where the one person's house had been struck by a car who had veered off the road. So now you see those flashing lights out there. That was something we had tried to do a couple of years ago, which was kind of above and beyond even at that time. And acknowledging that was not the perfect solution, but we have been trying to acknowledge this, and I think now we're here where we can actually make a significant change. Go to the next, please. And as a result of that, we have been looking very carefully at the crashes. Some of this, I see a couple of familiar faces here. Y'all might remember this tall redhead from last, I think, must have been right before all the COVID stuff came down. I came out and talked to y'all about some of these ideas. So if that sounds familiar, I'm the same guy. So we've been talking about some of this for, like I said, a while. So we did a whole crash analysis along here on Parker Road. And, probably not too many surprises, but we do have a crash problem all up and down along the street, as that demonstrates. And looking at the actual crash numbers at the bottom, the crash rate takes into account the traffic volumes and the number of crashes. And for the Texas average for roads like this is about 165, and on Parker Road, it's actually several times that average amount. So all of these factors point to we do have a crash problem on Parker Road. It is not just anecdotal experience. You can go to the next, please. And looking at the crashes, they are largely driver related. We have a couple that involve people walking and biking, several with a fixed object. That could be the run off the road. That was likely anybody running to a fence or a house, that would count as a fixed object. Some parked cars, mostly drivers crashing into other drivers. You can go to the next. I have a few more data about the crashes that we're experiencing. A lot of these are the factors that have contributed to the crashing. So a good proportion go to speeding related. This is all what HPD comes back, and in their assessment, these are the factors that are related. So speeding is high. It could be that somebody ran a stop sign or a traffic signal. That's like disregarding traffic. Failure to yield right away could be if somebody's trying to turn off a side street and they can't judge the gap in traffic, or if you just don't stop when you're supposed to. An unsafe driving maneuver is kind of a catch-all for somebody just doing something a little crazy out there. So, I mean, they're all tied together, and that is a trend that we're seeing. All right, next slide. So that on the speeding element, this one of the things, don't know if y'all have all seen this chart before. This is shown in a couple of different ways, but this has to do with if you're a person who is walking, but this is more than just people walking. This is basically anybody in a crash, but it's most obvious if you're a person walking or biking who gets hit by a car, that if you get hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, you have a 90% chance of surviving. It's about half and half if you get struck by somebody at 30 miles an hour, and at 40 miles an hour, which is a pretty common speed on our city roadways, you only have a 10% chance of surviving. So you can see how all of those trends would also lead to losing control of vehicles, or not being able to judge what you're seeing in your cone of vision. All that goes together. So the higher speeds can lead to more dangerous conditions. You click next, there's an animation. Just click once for me. And so our posted speed out there right now is right in the middle there. That's the legal speed. If you go 35 miles an hour, you are legal. But as anybody could tell, anybody who lives along that, click the next one, and what people are actually driving are even faster. Our prevailing speeds, our 85th percentile speeds are closer to 45. And, I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. So that just goes to show that speeding is, and we saw it in the crashes, speeding is a challenge out here. There's no reason that anybody really needs to be driving that fast on a street through a neighborhood in our city. But the way the cues of the roadway sometimes lead to encourage those higher speeds. And so putting all that together, we are looking for how can we make this street a safe street that still moves traffic effectively in your neighborhood. Next slide, please. And so, as the council member had pointed out, we look at this issue all across the city, and it's one of the major challenges of the city is that when we have very large roads, people tend to go faster. And Parker Road, when it was widened to 4 lanes, that took the 2-lane roadway it was and widened it quite a bit. And that's not atypical. That's a frequent cross section we use around town. And when it is the right size for the demand of your traffic, it can work well. But when it's more than the traffic requires, that's when you have some of the speeding conditions. And so what we're showing here, we did traffic counts before COVID, and what we're finding is that in the busiest hour of the day, in the eastbound direction, that's looking into the page, at 8:34, that's how many cars per hour are shared over those 2 lanes. And in the busiest hour of the westbound coming out at you, that 8:16, busiest hour of those 2 lanes. It is worth noting that each lane has a capacity of at least 800 vehicles per hour, and it's probably even more than that. It's, you know, a freeway lane, for example. We don't want a freeway here, but just to take the higher limit of what a lane can do, that's closer to 2,000 or 2,200 vehicles an hour. All that saying, we have a lot of capacity to move traffic here. And if you go to the next slide, I think that shows it even more. So that's just during the peak hour. And what this shows is across a typical day, you know, our total traffic is at 16,373. But spread out over the day, most of those hours are way less than that 800. I got the 800 highlighted as the kind of the lower limit of the capacity, but it's probably higher than that. Most hours are so far below that that people are treating it like a highway. People are treating it like a highway. So you can go on to the next. So what we are proposing is, you know, all that goes to what was the right lane configuration for that demand of traffic. And so working with the council member, we're looking at the best way we could tighten up that road and still move as many cars as we need to, still move the trucks we need to. The only thing we should be changing is hopefully bringing down the speeds and making it safer for them, making so they can't fly around corners and veer off the road and crash into somebody's house. And if they are going a little bit faster, now you have this extra 2-foot concrete barrier, which you can show. We're proposing to use that as a more kind of aesthetic treatment. We've looked at a lot of options, but this would be a solid concrete barrier that cars can still move through. There's still enough room for them to get through. Trucks can get through, buses can get through if they need to get through. But if they try to veer off, they're going to have to hit a couple of curbs before they go into anybody's yard. I mean, they're going to have a lot of things symbolizing to them that they need to slow down. And then that frees up all the rest of the space for a lot of different options. So we're showing here how that can be used as a space for people to bike. But we've used the space seen in a lot of other creative ways. And we'd welcome feedback from the community about this is basically reclaiming space for the neighborhood. And, you know, the goal is to make it safer so that the cars can go safer. But this is kind of a nice side effect where we have extra space now that we think would be safe for families to. It's hard to imagine Parker Road. Would I ever want to bike on Parker Road? Not as it is now. And I'm a confident biker. But if the road changes in its configuration, it might be a really nice place to bike. But we can also look at other things that we can do out there too. I mean, the table is open, and we look for comments and feedback. Next slide. So here is just that summary of all that put together. Our main goal is to reduce the vehicle lanes to meet our capacity, which should have the benefits of slowing vehicle speeds, decreasing turning conflicts. I didn't really talk about that too much, but now if you're turning off a side street, you have fewer lanes you have to cross, fewer conflict points you have to watch out for to make sure you're not going to crash. So it has that benefit of increasing safety. The truck traffic should still be able to move through through the street. They should be able to do it at a slower speed. They have other options they can take as well. So in case this is no longer, if it's not moving as fast as they want to move their freight, they might be encouraged to take other routes. We think through this project we'll be able to improve some of the intersections as well. We've heard a lot about Carver. I think Carver is the one for a long time we've heard about a need for improving that. Through this project, we will be able to make some improvements, and it might be a phased approach, but we'll definitely have an impact there, and it might open the door for more options in the future. And then that last bullet point, adding the concrete barrier between the vehicle travel lane and the curb, really sets off that space so that it can be something that really serves the community in a safe way. All right, Val, next slide. We're near the end of this. What we are looking at a longer section of Parker Road. And what we're currently working on now is a design to see how much we can afford. The council members are very generous with that $240,000. And I think we're going to be able to hit some of our tough spots. And where we want to really start is where you can see a lot of those highlighted crashes between Clark. Is it Clark? Clark. Why am I saying Carver? Is there a Carver Road? Sorry, Clark. Clark and Bowman. And then we might be able to extend that more as our designs come in. We'd like to extend that west to O'Donnell to be able to serve all the parks and the schools that are kind of along there. And then in future phases, as we have potentially more funding that comes available, we'd like to extend that all the way to Fulton on one side and get it past the Hardy Bridge over to Exeter. And even longer term, we'd like to extend it even farther. Because we know a lot of the same design has repeated itself in other neighborhoods. It does seem like this particular stretch has some of the worst problems, so we'd like to start here. But that's what we're currently looking at, and we'll have more information soon. All right, Val, next. Okay, I guess that is it for now for our questions. Let me see if we got a couple of ways we can do it. It's a small group. I think we were set up for a much larger group. So you can either type in the chat box you have questions, or we can welcome if you want to go around. Val, I don't know, Val, maybe I'll let you handle it. But I think we could probably just do a conversation too.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, first here, I'm looking at our participation. Hector Garza is the first guest on the list, so if he wants to go ahead and chime in, or if Joelle or Paula want to go ahead and unmute and ask any questions or submit any comments at this time, that's totally fine. We can have more of a conversation setting.
Hey,
Paula,
Joe,
you're
well,
unmuted,
Joe-
so you can go
yeah,
ahead.
Joe or Hector, I'll let y'all go first since you live there. And then I'll go after. I do have some questions, but I'll let them go first since they live on Parker.
Okay. I mean, I can start. One of the things is so when this went around last time, and there was a big push, and I don't know, Paula, how many people do you think were there at the elementary school over there several years ago?
Probably 100, 150.
There was
We had quite a few.
There was very adamant that the purpose shouldn't be bike lanes. Apparently, this area very much hates bike lanes. Now, I'm fine with it, and I think they could be convinced. But when we brought it back around and started talking about doing it for parking and then having the addition of bike lanes, there was people much more satisfied with that. And part of my understanding was that there was federal funding for bike lanes. Now, it sounds like maybe that had dried up, but that was the purpose for saying that we would do bike lanes also. But right now, most of these houses have very much a shortage of parking, because when the road was expanded, it took up all their parking and it became 2 lanes, and now there's nowhere for them to park. So the thought was, and I can't remember if it was parking next to the curb and a bike lane right outside of that, or a parking with a bike lane between the curb and the cars, but that's what was kind of mentioned when we talked about it a year and a half ago before the COVID thing. So my thoughts there are parking is what everyone seemed very enthused about. And with the thought that even if we had to have a bike lane, that would be acceptable if it helped funding and getting things moving forward. But that's what the consensus was last time when there was a big meeting, and the backlash went on for a year. Every I always forget that every civic club meeting, anytime someone came and mentioned bicycles, they were ostracized because there was so much anger about bicycles. So that's my concern there. Ended today.
Mr. Todd, do you think that has changed at all? I guess I wasn't there for that larger meeting, and I know that did not go well for the bike lane idea. But the last time I presented the community, it was a much smaller group. We had maybe 20 people, 20, 30 people. But that particular group had acknowledged the previous feedback, and it almost seemed that it had evolved to say, hey, you know what, we have a problem out here. We want to make this safer for families. And the other thing I did hear very clearly at that meeting is that they did not think parking was a good idea, because they didn't think anybody would want to park on Parker because it's so fast and dangerous. So I'm just wondering, is it possible something has changed?
Yeah, we can ask more of the people, but my understanding after that meeting was they wanted parking, and if we have to have a bike lane to get funding, that was fine. We would deal with a bike lane. But the real concern that a lot of people seem to want is parking. And maybe, I don't know who talked to. Now, my big concern about parking is I'm scared there's going to be a bunch of broken down cars on Parker, which would not be acceptable. We would just have to be diligent about making sure those people are ticketed. But, I can call 311 if we see an issue, if we see a car that's been there on blocks for a long time. But driving down like Hardy or is it Elysian, however you say it, it seemed that didn't seem to be an issue down there. And I would have thought it would have been. I guess there's not a bike lane also there, is there? That's just parking, correct?
No, there's a bike lane with that parking in Hardy and Elysian. Yeah, there's actually, it's behind the parking, so you have a line of parked cars between cars and the curb.
Okay.
So it's, I don't think we can do that here, I don't believe, because I don't think we have as much space as there is in Hardy and Elysian.
Okay. Well, when we had talked about it before, my understanding and the perception I got from everyone was that they were much happier with the idea of parking and a bicycle lane. I mean, at my house, I have plenty of parking, so I'm not as concerned about it. But from talking to people, that seemed very much what the concern was. And Paula, you might be able to chime in if that was the case or not, or if I'm mistaken.
No, you're right.
Okay.
I think, I tell you what, I want between you and Hector to go first, and then I'll come back with comments. But yeah, a lot of what you said is true.
Okay. Now I'm curious over here on the right. I guess these are pictures over the years of cars that have been hit. Did you put those up, Hector?
Yeah, I put them up. Those pictures were taken right across the street from my parents' house. I've lived on Parker since '89, in that same house where the curb is at. And majority of the accidents that I just posted are from right across the street. Everything that's happened over the years, and one of them is from, I want to say February. The very first one I posted, that was earlier this year. Then down the street there was another accident right after that during Easter weekend. So I live on the most dangerous street of Parker, the most dangerous part of Parker.
Yeah.
And I was at that last Civic Club meeting where we took a vote and we went ahead with the proposed route lane, which was parking in a bike lane and then the barriers like that are on Hardy and Elysian and then the lane.
Yeah.
We were okay with that because whatever gets the ball moving faster, if it involves a bike lane, we were fine with that. As long as we were able, get some of that parking to be able to park in front of the houses, because right there on that curve, some of those people don't even have driveways. They had to turn the side of their house into a driveway.
Yeah. It's pretty, what's happened whenever they did the expansion, it really messed up some people's ability to park and have a house. Because a lot of them, they had plenty of room in front of the house before, but when that extra lane was added.
Yeah,
So,
especially at the curve, a lot of people's driveways got chopped in half or even more.
I live at one of the probably the safest end of Parker, and I've had two cars in my yard. One high centered and went into the neighbor's fence and got stuck. So I don't know if stuff like that gets reported to the police. For that one, I don't think a police car was ever out there. I think a wrecker came, but that was it.
Yeah, but you can see the pictures. Is the house across the street, Miss Roberts? She's was like one of the original people that lived on Parker. You can see her house has been hit by a car. She had two cars in her living room. She had to pay out of pocket out her own money to put those posts, those concrete poles around her house to keep cars from going in. And then the house next to her, they hit their house, they hit the garage, and then the house next to that one, they hit the corner of the gate, and then back in February or March, they took the entire gate out. They hit the entire gate. And those are still wrought iron gates. It takes a lot of force to be able to destroy one of those.
Well, so I think, even if it was in the middle, I think that would slow people down both directions because it doesn't look like you have a racetrack in front of you.
Yeah, because that's pretty much where everybody, once they leave Bowman, they're trying to get as fast as they can to Airline, and they have to come through the 200 block, and that's where the curve is at, the most dangerous portion of it. Because I was trying to back into the driveway, and like this little small Civic decided he had enough space to drive his car, go real fast, and get behind my truck as I was reversing into the driveway. He hopped on the sidewalk to go around me as I was reversing in. That kind of made me real livid. I was real tempted to chase him down because that was like the last straw. I've never seen anybody that dumb to do that. Because if I would have reversed pretty fast like I normally do so I don't hold up the traffic, It would either rear-ended up, messed it up my brand new truck from the rear, or he would have destroyed my mom's house.
So,
I'm hearing all this, and I've got a couple thoughts. And I remember last year when Hector, I remember you, and we were discussing this, and thinking about it more, I'm not sure. I don't think we can make it as safe as possible if we do the parking. What I'm thinking is, if we have parking, basically you have to keep it open. You have to keep it open, and if you have a line of cars who are parked there, that might be okay. If all the cars are parking there 24/7, and you got a long line, that'll make it feel tight and people go slower. But if you've only got a handful of people parking, it's still going to feel the same. It's still going to feel like a wide open street. You're not going to have that protection for people crashing across the yard into people's houses. So what I'm hearing is that I think we need to talk with more people. But I do think that what I'm hearing is that the safety and making sure that people's property is protected and making sure their lives are protected is the most important.
My only thing is, like, I love what y'all did with Hardy and Elysian, because those people that lived down that street, they were prisoners of their own home. Because that is like the expressway to downtown in the morning when it was 4 lanes each way. I was driving through there in the afternoon, and there was kids kind of playing in the street, and a Corvette was coming down. They ran out of the street, and the dude ran over a little girl's shoe, Lysandro, that got held up in the street. But my thing is, if you do the concrete barrier on Parker, it's just some of the houses there, they got 2 or 3 car driveways, and then 10 feet over there's another 2-car driveway. So I see that they're not going to have like a solid, quarter-mile strip of a 2-foot concrete barrier all the way down. If you go down that section of Parker, it's like driveway, space, driveway. Some driveways are back to back, some of them are spaced out. Like my mom, we got a 3-car driveway, and then maybe like an 8-foot space, and then there's another 2-car driveway. So it's just gonna look real choppy, and they especially around that curve. When they come around that curve, our house is on that curve. There wouldn't be no barrier whatsoever to stop them from hitting the sidewalk or the fence or anything. We go with the 2-foot barrier, because the driveway's there. You can't block the driveway with that 2-foot barrier.
Well, it was 2 foot wide, not 2 foot tall, correct?
So that's why I like the Hardy Elysian way, because at least that you can kind of go over those with a car or a truck.
Well, when you said 2 foot barrier, you don't mean 2 foot tall, you mean 2 foot wide.
2 foot
That's
wide.
correct. Yeah.
So
2
it's
foot wide.
not, you would drive over it anywhere.
Yeah, you're gonna hit it every other driveway, and at any point down Parker, a car would be able to hit it and be launched and go in either direction.
But it's a 2 foot wide speed bump essentially, but that goes parallel. So it's only this tall, but it's 2 feet wide.
It's 2 feet wide, but you're gonna have like 20 feet of no barrier, 10 feet of barrier, 10 feet of no barrier, 8 feet of barrier. Then you might go 2 feet of barrier, 20 feet no barrier. You know what I mean? There's gonna be ways for cars to get into somebody's driveway or potentially hit the fence or a car or a house. Now, if you have that thought,
I hear you.
So,
I think let us take a closer engineering look at it and see where we can do, because I hear that concern, and I appreciate it. And if we're having to provide gaps everywhere and we're not going to make a difference, then we want to make sure we're making a difference.
Yeah.
I think what we'll find is it will be enough. I think we'll be able to keep 2 cars from racing each other down the street. I think if we can just have some physical barriers through there, that might be all we need. But let us take that back, and we'll take a closer look at it with the design, if that's okay.
I like the Elysian speed bump if they could be combined with like speed bumps you see in a parking lot sometimes, the big round steel ones. Put those in front of a driveway, because those are easy to go over with a car and a vehicle. But then have those big ones like I put on Elysian that sit up almost like a curb, and put those where there isn't a driveway. So at least you still have a solid line of some type of barrier or something that can keep people in the lane. Because once I think if we do get parking and a bike lane in front of people's houses, people will start parking in front of their house.
Right.
It will happen, especially on that section of Parker, because some people don't even have a front yard because they had to turn it into a driveway once the street was widened. So I'm sure some people would like to park in front of the house.
Hey, Ian, so I have a couple of questions. One is, of course, we have the gracious support, the council member giving funds for this project. Is it a case where, in order to move it forward faster, that we need the bike lanes in order to get the funding from that end of it? Is that why we need to move forward on a bike lane end of it? And like they said, Joel said earlier, I mean, safety is the most important thing as far as people's homes, period, because that's been the huge problem. So do we need the bike lanes because of the funding in order to move it forward and faster? Is one of my things. Two is that I understand the situation as far as doing it in sections, and yes, definitely Parker to Bauman is the worst part of it. So my concern there is that, okay, so we narrowed that strip part of it to one lane. What happens east of that and what happens west of that in order to slow people down? At that point, of course, Bauman, you have a light. And finally, at Clark, can we get a stop sign? Because if you do it in sections, they're going to have to stop at Clark, which that's what we've been saying all along. Clark always had a four-way stop anyway. Can we put a stop there in order, because they're going to have to stop somewhere, because they're not going to be able to go from 2 lanes to 1 lane without more danger occurring, if you know what I mean. The other question I have is that in setting it up, again, going back to the safety of people's homes, I guess that's my main concern. It's like, just like you said, I mean, so many of these people have had to endure the cost of redoing their homes and so forth else. You know, we've just got to do that. The other concern is that, and on a parking end of it, I mean, people are parking on the Escapade now, you know, as far as when they need extra parking, if they have parties and so forth else, which of course is illegal to do. But again, narrowing it down, I don't want it to be a dangerous situation in that, again, people's homes are, you know, sacrificed because of the situation. I don't know. I mean, it's just, that's the key concern. It's like everybody's safety. And I guess that's where everybody went, okay, if we have to take the bike lanes in order to get the funding to move it further, I think that's why people, like Joel said, people are willing to accept the bike lanes. I think the whole problem with the bike lane situation is, which everybody's concerned about, when you're seeing them flying down Parker and so forth else, it's like, who in their right mind would get on Parker with a bicycle? You know what I mean? Because it's like, they'd be hitting a heartbeat, you know? And so I think that's where everybody just went, are you crazy? I mean,
Well,
you know, it's like,
I think
I
a
would
lot
get
of
my
people,
bike on there, you know, I wouldn't even walk on that street hardly, you know? I mean, it's just, they go too fast.
I think a lot of people get annoyed with the bicyclists causing traffic problems, which the good ones don't, but some bicyclists, when they get in big groups, they cause traffic problems. They don't obey traffic signs, things like that.
Yeah.
Which is what I remember the sentiment being. Because I remember there was a lot of anecdotes about driving around like downtown and stuff like that, and how much of a problem people on bicycles cause.
Right. So to do
I
the
think
project and move it forward, is it a case that we need the bike lanes in order to move it forward faster?
Well, I think a couple of us can take these questions. My colleague Peter Eccles in the planning department wanted to give his thoughts on some of these. Pete, you want to jump in?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My name is Peter Eccles. I work in the planning department, been working closely with Valerie and Ian and the council member on this. I'll defer to the council member on what she's willing to fund, whether it's a bike lane or not, but we totally agree that safety is the #1 concern here. And it's really our opinion, I think, or at least speaking for myself, that the best way to achieve that safety is with a protected bike lane. In the protected bike lane option, when you're driving down Parker Road at a high speed, the first thing to your right is not a empty parking space or a full parking space. It's not another lane. It is a concrete wall. And this is the wall that will protect the sidewalks, your front yard, your homes from that speeding traffic. If there's parking there, we can't put that concrete barrier directly adjacent to the travel lane. And in that option, that is the best protection that we can offer the side of the street where your homes are from the speeding traffic.
So describe the concrete wall. My understanding was it was high and short enough you could drive over it.
Ian, I don't know if I would describe it that way.
It's basically like a median. I mean, take a look at the median in the middle of the road. It won't have grass in it, but it'll be that same height. It's like a concrete median.
Okay, so it'll be a concrete median, but there'll be a break for everyone's driveway?
Yeah, that's correct. So as Hector was pointed out, where we have a lot of driveways, you'll have a lot of breaks. But
So is this anywhere else so that when we do the in-person meeting that you could show pictures of that so people can visually see what that looks like? Is there any place else in Houston you've done that?
We're kind of on the cutting edge here. We have a couple other projects that are in the construction right now. We do have some good design visuals though, that I think we can convey this from some of our other projects that are quickly going in construction. If you estimate a year, we'll have plenty of pictures, but right now, cutting edge. So I think we can put together some images that y'all can share of similar kinds of projects.
I apologize, y'all. I have to leave. I've got a very sick kid, so he's not doing well tonight.
Oh,
So I apologize. I have to leave. I'm not angry. I'm just leaving.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Mr. Shaw. Hope he feels better.
Thanks, Joe.
Ian, if I could just chime in, we do have Rolando on the line who can probably speak a little bit more to the city standards for the curbing installation as far as width and height. Rolando or Brandy, is that something y'all can quickly speak on?
Yes, I guess these are 2 feet wide and basically 6 inches tall. And they can be ran over like they're talking, and they can miss. I guess we would have pavement markings to kind of guide them from driveway to driveway, but they will be kind of 2 foot wide, 2 foot long somewhere, 8 foot long, stuff like that. But the pavement markings would kind of guide them down the street too, and those medians would be painted.
Great, and these are not mountable curves. They are straight up and down 6-inch curved, right?
They don't move. They're built into the road, basically.
Okay, so there's no way they're going to drive over this thinking that they can park type situation, right?
No, they're pretty much will hit their muffler or something under the car and come to a stop. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty protective.
And
Thank you,
Oh, I think you
Rolando.
had a
And just for everyone's awareness, Rolando is with our design team.
I'd like to just throw in that I like hearing about the curb better than the armadillo solution. A lot of people think they're ugly, and so and including me. So I think curb would be a more attractive solution in a neighborhood too.
yeah, and Hector, thank you for bringing in the Hardy and Elysian part of this. And those are good examples, but this will even be, I think, an enhancement over what you see in Hardy and Elysian. This is a slightly different quality of curb that we don't have it constructed yet, but I believe this will be a longer lasting and even more aesthetically pleasing option than on a Hardy and Elysian.
My only thing was that with the wide new concrete barrier, like say if you're trying to pull a trailer or somewhat, it's going to be hard to pull in front of your house. If say you're pulling the trailer, you're going to have to eventually jump that median, that 2-foot median with your vehicle, with your truck, your trailer. Like say if you're trying to load something up, get in and get out. Like with the Legion, well, like what I see on a Legion, it's real easy. It's not that hard to be able to jump, to drive over those with a truck or you're pulling some sort of trailer. And I was told on the bike lane the last time, at the last Civic Club meeting we had, when you the presentation and everything, and then I know there's room for improvement. And my goal for living in the neighborhood, like for say the bike lane to run from North Line to Shady Lane, because then you would connect Shady Lane Park to North Line Park with a bike lane, and you have say what 1, 2, 3 elementary schools are on or near within a quarter mile or less than a quarter mile of Parker Road. You have 2 of them that are on Parker, one at Alding Westfield, one is 1 block over at Clark, which Clark is a major intersection for kids that would like to walk to school, or once upon a time we used to walk. And then you have Lions, which is a McGalleon in Parker, which you can't even cross that anymore. You haven't been able to cross that for 10 years now. So I was sold with the bike lane proposal we had last time, and with using Harding and Legion as an example, that right there implemented on Parker, I'm sure would entice people to park their car in front of their house, and that would definitely slow down the vehicles, especially once you choke down the street to 1 lane. You can only go as fast as the car in front of you. And
Justin, Hector, let me jump real fast, because I know I gave that presentation, and I'm worried that I might have given the wrong impression. I think if I brought up Hardy and the Legion, it was more to talk about that type of delineation, that firm kind of delineation. The specific arrangement of parking next to a bike lane, like we have in Hardy and the Legion, we just don't have enough room here to do that. So that's to provide the physical kind of barrier that you see in Hardy and the Legion, we cannot do parking on Parker. So yeah, I apologize. I might have sent a incorrect message last time, but I didn't mean to. Does that make sense though?
Could we take away from the median to be able to make that happen? Because you make it a
well, I mean, you're talking about a much bigger project. You might talk about a much bigger project at that point. I mean, I would say long term, that could potentially happen. Yeah. This is what we're able to do with the council members' funds right now are quickly add some stuff. But as soon as what you're talking about is doable, and we actually worked with Metro to do that on Cavalcade in the near north side, and they took out of the median. They had extra median room, and they were able to add bike lanes that way. But it ended up being a lot of money because you have to worry about the drainage, you have to worry about the substructure. All we're doing is throwing stuff on top of the pavement. So I would say keep that in mind. I mean, maybe longer term we can look for funding. That we can work with the neighborhood to find funding to do something even more expensive along here. But that's not going to be an option for this project.
So Ian, I go back to the question of how are you going to slow him down to do the first phase? When you get to Clark, what's going to happen?
I'd say let us work with Rolando, our consultant, and see what the options are. And I think we'll make note of that. We want to make sure that the transitions on either side. And the other thing is we don't know, once our cost estimates come in, we might be able to expand this a little bit. So I don't necessarily want to spend all this time committing to any one thing, one intersection.
Yeah, that's
might actually be the next intersection.
Right. Yeah.
So
and then council member, I think depending on how, the timeline of this and stuff like that, we'll probably need to work with Deschamps because we'll need to move their traffic over so that they're not blocking that intersection as far as Clark and Parker on school days. Try and move their traffic a different direction than what they are now, because I think it kind of blocks it trying to make that left and or right, as far as trying to go to the school. So, I mean, that's a future thing to think about.
Yeah, we'll have to coordinate with
that. Paula, now do you mean during construction, like what we would do as far as traffic safety during construction? Sorry,
I just talking about full time. No, I'm talking about full time once school gets started. you know, project wise, so that the traffic at the school itself changes the direction of what they're doing, so that it's not, because you've got one lane. So now people
Gotcha.
can go to the right or to the left to get around school traffic that's trying to turn into, go down Clark to get on to the Shams area, the elementary school. This
Gotcha.
way, if we put them a back way in, they can come out instead of it being a case of holding up traffic on Clark, you know, trying to get down Clark to get to the school.
Okay,
what I'm saying?
thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
if that helps, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, Ian, I think we are just about ready to kind of wrap it up. If we want to go ahead and go to the next slide and talk about next steps.
I think, yeah, you can do that, but I did see one other question from Richard C., who asked if we can add trees to the medians or esplanades. And I think it's a great question. It's one the council member also prioritizes.
Well,
And we are reaching out to Trees for Houston to see if we have some opportunities to do that. Trees for Houston has been a very good partner in the past for providing trees, and that might be something we can do here.
yeah, Ian, I was going to bring that up also, just some of the fact, which is weird in that when the city widens roads and everything else, and you have an esplanade in the center, everybody else has always gotten trees and stuff. Why Parker, from that whole section, did not ever have trees or landscaping or anything else on it? God knows, you know, but I mean, it's like it never happened one way or the other to make it create even more so a community and a neighborhood. I mean, trees create that, you know. Why that ever got skipped, I don't know. But that does need to be a part of the project if we have the funds in order to do that. That'd be fabulous if we did it all at the same time, because it creates the newness of the project itself.
Right. And it was just, I think, maybe a year ago that Trees for Houston announced a 1 million tree campaign, and that they will be planting it. And Barry Ward, who's the director, met with me and said that there were a lot of those trees were coming to district age, and he's a great partner. So I think, a long stretch like this, I think I'm very optimistic about being able to get their help in getting trees in. One of the things that's really nice about Trees for Houston, they don't just provide the trees, but they help water them for the first couple of years, I believe.
That'd be fabulous. I know Joel at his end, which he's closer to the airline end, he just planted trees, you know, because he got tired of looking at it. So he planted his own trees in the median area, you know. So yeah, so that was anyway.
And I apologize. The storm is coming here in downtown, so I think our server's starting to act a little silly over here at 611 Walker. But I do see the updated chat room. And Richard C. did provide another question. Will this project open up the McGowan at Parker intersection?
That is my hope. That's that part of Parker that is in the kind of the future phase that hopefully it's not a distant future phase. Hopefully we'll be able to do the funding very quickly. But when this is eventually able to expand that way towards the Hardy Bridge, that is the goal. Let's make it safe. And that was one of the things by Parker and McGowan. That's one of those intersections that did have a crash problem for a long time. And the only tool that we had at the time was to say, you know what, we need to send the message. This is not a safe intersection. Please find another way to go. And it's not the perfect solution. We hate doing it. But with this, I think we will be bringing the road safety improvements to this road that'll make it easier to access the street and to turn onto and off of it. So that is my intention, to reopen that up when we get down to that far.
Oh, that'd be great.
I got a question. Next time we have a meeting, I was wondering, can y'all reach out to North Houston Pole and Center Point and see how many light poles have they had to replace down Parker Road, down the entire strip from 45 to 59, because that's pretty much the section that's been widened over the years, and you'll see how many have been hit, because they have to be replaced by cars getting hit.
We can do that, but who do we need to convince at this point? I mean, you've got all of us on board to do something. I mean, we're 100% on board with making safety improvement.
Like, I work for Center Point, and they got plenty of money. Maybe you can get them to pitch in a couple $100,000 just to prevent them from wasting money on having to replace poles every 2 months. Because I drive down there and I'll report them if I see a pole that's leaning or been hit. I have the software to be able to report them, and I do in case somebody else doesn't report them. So maybe they can help us out with a grant or something. They seem to like do things for charity, and for United Way, they push that on us a lot. So maybe they can do something good.
Well, thank you,
I
Hector.
would
Yeah,
say
we
that's
will.
a great suggestion. We are not a nonpartisan 301c organization, so unfortunately we just can't accept that money, but I think that's a good idea. I mean, never hurts to ask, I guess, Ian. for money, never hurts to ask.
Yeah, I was wondering, somebody with inside track, maybe who like works there, wanted to get that up the ladder.
There you go.
We'll take that. We'll see what we can do with it. I think at the very least we can say that that's another side benefit of this. We should be able to keep the lighting in better shape. So we'll see where we go with it. So I guess, Val, did you want to handle this last slide for us?
Yeah, no problem. So of course, next steps, we would like for everyone to submit their comments and questions to our www.letstalkhouston.org/mobility. And I will add this into the chat room so that way you can copy and paste and share it with your neighbors. We will, as the council member announced at the beginning of the meeting, we are in the early stages of planning a in-person public meeting Monday, July 12th between 6 and 8 at the Houston Community College at 8001 Fulton. So please be on the lookout for further notifications about that meeting coming up. And post revisions and the presentation materials, overall materials will be posted at the Let's Talk Houston website. So be on the lookout for that update here in the next couple of days. And thank you for joining us tonight. Paula, I would like to share the link of the recording with you, so that way you can share it with your mailing list. If that's okay with you.
That'd be great, please. Yeah, I was going to ask that. Also, I was going to request, which I think we did before, is it possible to mail in English and Spanish a notice for this in-person meeting to the people on Parker Road? I know that was done before.
Yeah,
but is that possible?
Notice, it's certainly enough time to do that.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, we have no problem walking the streets and so forth else, but if we could get something out there in person, that would help tremendously. As far as group mail and so forth else. Yeah.
Valerie, I mean, is that in a budget?
Is that possible, Valerie?
I'd be willing to, help pay for it if that, postage or whatever, if that's helpful to y'all.
Oh yeah, we can certainly look into it and circle back to you, council member.
Yeah, just let me know too, Valerie, because I'll do my part as far as if we walk the streets and so forth else to make sure when it's closer to the time. But if we could give everybody a heads up now, because we definitely want participation, especially on those people that live on Parker. I mean, that's what this is all about.
And the point that it needs to be in Spanish is important too.
Definitely. You please don't do it without it being in Spanish. Right. It'd be a disadvantage to a lot of people, majority of the community. Yeah.
As we move into that next meeting, we'd really like to be able to reach out to y'all. If y'all didn't mind sharing your emails in the chat, we'd love to. That might be the easiest way for some of our staff people to get back to you. Yeah, make sure we're capturing everything. Yeah. Thank you, Paula. Hector, if you can do it too.
Thank you so much. I think we're moving ahead now, a lot more so. People being open to it. Like I said, it's public safety. We've got to do something for these people as far as their homes so that we can protect them. Yep, definitely. And thank you, council member. Yeah, thank you for moving forward. Thank you for the funding for this. We greatly appreciate that also.
Well, we're doing what we can. Valerie, would you please send me the link to this presentation too, and we'll put it on our website.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.
All right, then. Well, I sure appreciate everyone. I mean, really, truly, every single one of you. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness and your commitment to solving this very dangerous problem. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks again. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.